Get ready to
Bomba! Welcome to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. On top of Philadelphia at the iconic Pyramid Club, there's your host, Ray Collazo. You have to subscribe to Bomba Live so you don't miss 1 second of these thoughtful and insightful conversations on Bomba on YouTube and anywhere you download an audio podcast, along with my fearless producer, Taylor Cadadis and XPX Productions. We're here to welcome a very special guest to the show, mental health counselor and the author of Little Charlie Unbroken, my homie Charles DeLeon. What's up, brother?
Hey, Ray, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. And if you already haven't gotten it, you're going to learn more about this incredible memoir from Charles DeLeon. It is a must read for anyone, really all of us in our community that are dealing with trauma on some levels and trying to support our loved ones through the traumas in our lives. Before we get into that, Charles, what's really interesting about our relationship is that we kind of have one and we kind of don't. And
Right.
It's kind of like interesting how, I don't know if it's like a COVID thing, maybe it's social media, but between our mutual, it seems like we have every mutual friend in common we can imagine, and I think we've met a few times with Edwin and Lai and Christina a few times through those folks, and social media kind of vibing. Like I feel like I'm your homie, I think I'm your homie, but this is probably like the third time we've ever met in person.
Right, in person, correct.
So do you find that people get drawn to you for the like in social media and maybe because you're out there a little bit with the content? What do you?
I think so. It's funny because when you see somebody that you know, like in social media, you don't know if you say hi or not.
Yeah.
But usually my rule is if you make eye contact with me, I'll say hello.
That's so interesting because what I find is that I do find that sometimes because we've been doing this for 10 years and 10 and a half. And I don't think it's a big deal. And oftentimes, and you have, and I encourage people to follow Charles DeLeon on social media. He does a lot of great, besides the book, and we're going to talk about that, but just a lot of inspirational content and provocative stuff, is that I'm sure you get this on some level, but because what we think we do on some level is like that big a deal. And I know oftentimes I think like nobody's pays attention, nobody cares, but people do pay attention.
Right.
And the ones that don't mention it, and I've noticed the people that are like friendly with me or friends of mine are fans or become fans, but they don't want to admit it because they think it's weird. But then, so their relationship changed where I don't feel that way. Right?
Absolutely. Sometimes when I put my videos out there, my mental health videos,
of course.
Somebody will come up to me and be like, and somebody who doesn't like my stuff, who doesn't really talk to me about mental health issues, will pull me aside and be like, I needed that today.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great experience when you get that feedback.
Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, I usually get that I'm using my hands too much. So the fact you get positive feedback is fantastic. I find to that point though, I find that oftentimes how little it is about for me, it could be for you, how little it is, the feedback, how it's not really that much about the content. Sometimes it is, but a lot of it is like, hey, you put yourself out there, you open yourself up, and nobody's been more forthcoming than you. We're going to talk about that in a second. But it's more just like going, especially when you're not a young buck and you're not like in that IG TikTok stage.
Right.
And especially as guys like us, we grown men and we still out here putting our feelings out here and trying to put it out there. So they admire the fact that we have the courage to do it. And you've been incredibly courageous. Later on in the show, Charles is going to ask me a little bit about kind of my political analysis about how what's happening, these tragic events that are happening with these Mideast conflicts are impacting domestic politics. I have some thoughts on that I want to share. Charles is going to play our increasingly wildly popular Wepa segment. I really got him. Y'all got to watch this. And I will introduce Bomba Live's newest sponsor later on the show. So a lot going on. First, Charles, you're really kicking off a series that we've started with our colleague Zulay Picarelli around continuing the conversation around esperanza, that even through hardship, there's hope in our community, and the fact that we need to have the courage to understand the importance of mental health, particularly when it comes to the conversation about Latino men and mental health. So Charles, I really look to people like you for this, as a clinical expert, as a mental health counselor, trainer, an advocate, an author. Where do we begin the conversation when it comes to Latino men and mental health and having the courage to engage in this conversation?
Yeah, well, I think that with any movement, right, because mental health is a movement at this point, it starts with awareness, right? Understanding that there is a need for mental health, just like medical health, just like you go and take your insulin if you have diabetes, just like if you have high blood pressure, you take high blood pressure medication. Your mental health needs to be taken care of as well. When we talk about Latinos, right, and large portion of the Black community as well, cultural sensitivity plays a part in that. I'll get into further when we talk more about the book. But part of the reason that I took so long to get mental health was because of the stigma behind being Latino and being masculine, not feeling like I needed that outside help.
Charles, we're just days away. We're taping this just a few days after the biggest Latino male celebrity in the planet. Bad Bunny goes on SNL
right.
with the fourth biggest Latino celebrity in the planet, male, Pedro Pascal. And they do a skit basically discussing this and how, especially Latino men of this era, seeking mental health, there's still a stigma in 2023.
Yeah, it was very real. I love Saturday Night Live, and I watched it. It was a really good skit. And we joke about it, but it's a serious situation. I just think that awareness, culture sensitivity, we have to make sure that we're breaking the stigma behind it, that we're having these conversations, and it just can't be a few people. It has to be community leaders. It has to be the pastors in the church, because church is also a barrier at times to mental health. Making sure that we have appropriate access for males, especially Latino males, in mental health, which Philadelphia is starting to do a better job of doing that, but we're still way behind the curve, because when we think of mental health, really in the last 20 or odd years, it's really been on children and women. Yeah. Right. The focus really hasn't been on men,
especially when it comes to the conversation on trauma.
Correct. So I just think that a lot of it for us is just making sure that we have some type of support, right, to support us in our journeys, because doing it by yourself seems undoable, right? And not just in biologically, we are wired to live in communities and need support, but especially Latinos, like our families, like they live together. Our kids don't move out until they're shacked up and married, right? If they move out at all.
And even before this modern era, like multi-generational families where
absolutely,
abuela está contigo, and you know everyone raised you. I got cousins. I don't really even know, how exactly they're related to me. I just know we're family.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So if you're not getting that support from your family, then you need close friends that'll give you support to take that journey on, because it's very difficult to do it by yourself.
And I think that's what's probably, and I'm saying this in a positive way, triggered particularly men to respond to your message, because this is someone, even if they're not close to you or know you like that, this is like a relatable voice. You grew up in the hood, you're someone that's you're a sports fan, a lot of, you have a healthy like family life, but you still, there's mental health that you took the courage to step out publicly and dedicate your career to it. And so have you found that the Latino men have really gravitated towards your message?
Largely, it's been very positive. Largely, it's been very positive. There are people who are close to me that aren't as positive about it for their own reasons. So I think that, healing is a personal journey.
Yeah.
And we're all don't start at the same place. So we have to meet people where they're at. So I understand why they can't be here with me right now. I get it. It hurts.
It takes a lot of maturity, man.
On
your part to accept that.
So I think part of it is being able to live in gratitude, right? Understanding all the goodness that I have in my life. I have a career that I love, right? I get to help children and families with their mental health. I have a beautiful family. I've been married for 26 years.
That's a blessing, man.
I have 3 beautiful children. I have a granddaughter.
That's blessings upon blessings, yeah.
I have blessings upon blessings. So when things get difficult, I can lean on that. I have friends who I love. I have male friends that I love. And when we say goodbye, we be like, yo, I love you too. And sometimes I don't say it as I walk out, and they say it. So it's always, I don't want to take the moment for granted, right? Because tomorrow's not promised.
No shit.
So everybody who knows me, I want them to know that I genuinely love them, right? So, and I've really made a concerted effort over the last few years to make sure that my friends and family know that even the ones that we have some stress in the relationship.
You know, it's so interesting you say that today because I have two brothers and a sister who we just kind of discovered later in life, which is a whole other conversation. Shout out to Jessica. But that, so me and my brothers have always been good at that as adults to tell each other we love each other. And then the first guy in my like buddy group that started sharing that, you know, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we were texting yesterday and we shared that with each other on text. And I reflected on it last night about how he made me more comfortable with that concept of sharing with the same emotions with other buddies,
Right.
and how much courage that took, because it's not a small thing.
It's not. Well, children, right, are learned to they learn to socialize, right, by playing, and girls are given the freedom to cry and to feel emotional, but boys aren't.
That's right.
Hey, rub some mud on it.
That's
You
right.
know, it's gonna be all right. Don't worry about it. You know, toughen up. It's okay.
And a lot of times that gets confirmed by our moms. Like
Absolutely.
they're the first ones. Yeah, shake it off.
Absolutely.
You know.
You know, and part of it is I get it, right? Life is hard. You have to prepare them for that. But he's 5, right? Maybe we don't have to start so young.
Or it's serious what's going on.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Let's get right personal to it. Let's get right into it a little more with the book. Your personal story inspired your new book, Charles, Little Charlie, Unbroken. It takes on a very courageously, Charles, you know, talking about little Charlie, and takes on a very personal story of being the victim of sexual trauma. And so you were very intentional about the purposes right in the beginning of the book, and I encourage everyone to purchase it and read it and share it with others. You were very intentional from the very beginning of the book to talk about why you wrote the book. So why did you share little Charlie's story with the world?
I was sexually abused by my father at the age of 5. I did not go to therapy till I was 35 for that. And I had a lot of issues in my relationships because of that, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Now, mind you, at this point, I'm already working in mental health. So I am pretty gifted at working with other people and helping other people process their stuff. I was terrible at processing mine. And it led to me behaving in a way that was not, that quite honestly was betraying my relationship with my wife. That was betraying the relationship with my children. And a lot of it was unconscious, right? Because I didn't realize why I was doing these things. I was not able to articulate, communicate my emotions. The only thing I could, shocker, emote was stoicism, right? Aggression and lust. Those things. And I was a Marine right out of high school, and those things are encouraged, right? And I was a good Marine.
Yeah.
Right. And when I get home, or even growing up in the Badlands, right? And back in the 90s, it was encouraged to be tough.
Yeah.
And part of my toughness just hid the fear, right? The fear that I constantly had. I honestly believed that being scared every moment of the day was normal. I thought that was normal. What people don't realize is when children are traumatized, it rewires the brain, right? We have different parts of our brain. Our frontal lobe is where we process all the information we're talking, all we're thinking critically. That all happens up here. We have the amygdala, the part of the back of the brain, which kind of does your reflexes. Like if somebody jumps at you, right, and you jump back, you're not thinking about that. Your body just does it automatically. That's your amygdala. But then you see it's a friend messing with you, and you start laughing, and you're like, stupid, whatever you say, right? And you're back to calm. Mm-hmm. What happens to the amygdala is the amygdala doesn't know how to turn that off. So it's on, and it stays on. And we process information through instincts as opposed to processing the information. That's why a lot of kids who are traumatized, we have been labeled bad kids, because they go from 0 to 100. Because you took the book, they hit somebody. Because they're playing, they can't wait, they want to go in front of somebody. They learn to emote emotions negatively, right? Maladaptive behaviors. These are coping skills that they use to manage life, but they're not the appropriate ones.
What was so poignant to me reading this book, and again, I encourage everyone to read Little Charlie Unbroken, um, is that, and it's kind of obvious, but how being a victim, especially so young, of sexual trauma, especially on the hands of Johnny, um, impacts every part of your life.
Thank you for that.
Every part of your life. So I want people to get the book, but can we just talk for a second about how, to me, the obvious one that came to my mind as I'm reading it is the relationship with your amazing wife, Nisi.
Mm-hmm.
And so just one thought around a guy that's out there that might be struggling with this and trying to think through, how do I work through this trauma to have a healthier relationship with my partner?
Yeah. Early on, I would rather die with my secret than anybody knowing what was going on.
That was, yeah.
And I make no bones about this, right? I'm not the tough one in the family. It's my wife. And it took her leaving me, right, for me to realize that something's wrong. I didn't see it. I could not see it. And honestly, I was resistant to therapy, working in mental health, but I was resistant myself to therapy. And it took a few sessions for me to get into it. But what would happen is, my wife was a good communicator and she would want to talk. I didn't. She would get upset and I would shut down. I would try to avoid the situation, and I could sit there and take it and take it and take it, because all my life I've been taking it. I took it from my father, right? And then when my mom finally found out, God bless her, unknowingly, by telling me to be quiet about the situation, right? She was trying to protect me. She's like, she knows that people look at me, be like, oh, you're the abused kid. It just subconsciously made me feel like, damn, maybe I did something wrong.
It made you more insular.
Exactly. So everything I learned was quiet. My father said, if you tell somebody, I'm going to kill you, right? I'm going to kill your mom. So I stayed quiet. So every time my wife would get upset, when we get into these discussions, these arguments, and it would get heated, I would feel like the 5-year-old kid again, just having to sit down and stay quiet. And without therapy, I would have never changed that dynamic.
We're going to, later on in the show, Charles is going to give us, drop a few more jewels around how men, particularly Latino men, can begin and continue that process of healing and becoming unbroken. It's a very powerful message. Again, I encourage everyone to check out Little Charlie Unbroken anywhere you can get a book, Kindle, Amazon, local bookstores, what have you. Before we take our first, we see a best of clip from our recent smashing success first live show here at the Pyramid Club. I did want to talk about this impressive piece of hardware I have here.
Look at that. Is it quite impressive?
Brother, no FOMO right here. You got to work real hard to get one of these. I want to shout out our great friend and our newest sponsor, Felix Montelada of the Latin Podcast Awards. Charlie, this is like the Oscars for Latino podcasters all over the country, all over Latin America, all over the world. And we were blessed to win the 2022 award for Best Video Podcast. So, that's Charlie, amazing. I know it's hard to, I know you're a big podcast guy like all of us, and having a resource and understanding that there's actually culturally competent podcast content out there, I know is like a real great value.
Absolutely. Like I tuned into your podcast. Although it's funny, I found your podcast before I met you, so just so you know. Cool. So it was cool when I finally met you. Yeah, your podcast I listen to. Man Enough is another one that I like. I think that it's trying to break down the stereotype of having to feel or feeling less because you emote your emotions correctly.
Yeah, culturally competent content and particularly in language. The Latin Podcast Awards really gives you a breakdown of the best. If you want to find out what's going on in Uruguay or Spanish language content about mental health, just any category of interest you have related to the Latino community, you got to check out LatinPodcastAwards.com, LatinPodcastAwards.com. They just released on YouTube and online their 2023 award show, which was a very professionally done show. So I encourage everyone to check out Latin Podcast on social media and LatinPodcastAwards.com so you can watch the 2023 show. And also, if you're a Latino podcaster out there, and I encourage you, Charles, to get more involved in the podcast game. You have such a powerful message. You can also submit your podcast to be considered for the 2024 awards. Nice. So follow Latin Podcast Awards on social media. Follow LatinPodcastAwards.com. And maybe one day, if you work hard enough, you can get one of these bad boys. So
got to work pretty hard.
Much respect to our friends in the podcast world and our great friend and newest sponsor, Felix Montelada for Latin Podcast Awards. We're going to check out this Best of Bomba Live clip. We're coming back more with this great conversation with our great friend Charles DeLeon. And the Philly salsetta herself, Christina Vega. What's up, girl?
Hey.
Hold on. I grew up with half of y'all. I know how loud y'all get. I know how ratchet y'all have gotten in the past. So I know we can get a little louder for Christina. Give it up for Christina Vega. That's it.
Wow.
See, that's more like it. Thank you, Dro. That's what I'm used to. See, I grew up in Hunting Park.
I
know how
that
it is.
attention.
Let's go, Christina. Tell people tell people that are going to watch this on YouTube what they missing here. The vibe here is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And I want to give a shout out because many of the people in the audience are my people. So that just means I have a caliber of friends in the room.
No doubt.
Welcome, everybody. We're super psyched to be here. We do this all the time through the computer, so it's exciting to do it in front of a live audience and in front of most of the people that I love most.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the show you've been waiting for. Again, you have to subscribe to Bomba Live on YouTube and anywhere you can download an audio podcast so you don't miss 1 second of these insightful and provocative conversations con nuestro sazón, con Bomba. Charles, we just saw that clip with our great friend, Christina Vega, properly getting her flowers at our first ever live Bomba Live here at the Pyramid Club. We had over 100 people, leadership from our community. And, you know, when we're around, me and Christina alone, we throw a good party, much less the rest of our cast of characters, Vanessa, Zulai, Dionelli, and the rest of the family. But Charles, I know that, and you had some personal conflicts, so you weren't able to make it. But I know there's a little FOMO when you start seeing them pictures, brother. We threw a good time.
I did see the pictures.
It's the worst for a Latino. When you're invited to a party, you know it's going to be a good party. You get invited to the party. There's something happens last minute. You get broken tire. Your cousin needs a ride from the airport. And then you see the social media. We rub it in. We're the worst. Aren't we the worst? Rubbing it in is the worst part, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I saw those pictures and I was like, I needed to be there. Man.
You do. Well, the good news is we're going to have a spring event. You got to subscribe to Bomba Live on YouTube. You will be eligible to potentially go to our list. And there may be a tour. We may be getting out of Philly once in a while, brother. So more to come. I'll tell you this real quick story. So talk about FOMO, the worst FOMO of all times. So long story short is like 15 years ago, a buddy of mine says, I'm going to be the backstage producer for the AMLA Awards, which was like the big Latin, remember? Like the big Latin show? Yeah. He said, bro, you're going to help me backstage, walking all the starlets back and forth in the dressing rooms. We're going to be great. And, so it's like 3 months out. I'm like, yeah, sure. I really don't believe this is happening in my mind, right? I'm like, this is not really going to happen. I'm not really going to be in LA with all these people. Long story short, I get a job offer, so I can't go at the last second. I got to cancel LA plane tickets, the whole thing. I had to work. It was a new job. I was unemployed. I had to do it. So the Monday after, it's taped. I don't see it live, and it's a little before the social media thing, so it's not like I'm seeing pictures of it all weekend. I'm busy, so it's not really top of mind. The Monday after, a buddy of mine, Raul, and Raul remembers this, calls me and goes, Collazo, I just want to thank you. I said, why? Why you thank me? He goes, because you couldn't go. I got to go. Bro, he sent me pictures. He took pictures going all the Evas, all the Jessicas, Sofia Vergara, Bailó Merengue with Rosalind Sanchez. It was like the lowest FOMO moment of my life. I was like, I guess the job was worth it. But anyway, it happens. Charles, let's get back to this conversation. One of the things that I wanted to make sure we mentioned, because look, there's some heavy duty stuff, and I understand that this is going to trigger some people, right? But we have to move forward in this healing process. But you wanted to mention that it's good for us to find joy in the things we care about, and even hobbies and the joy of life is part of the healing process.
Absolutely. You know what? Self-care is extremely important.
No doubt.
I do some stuff that maybe some people will laugh at or think it's weird. I do toy photography.
That's awesome.
So comic books and that type of geeky stuff has always been part of my life. Even now I still read comic books. So I'll buy some action figures and I'll pose them. And I have this huge monitor at home and I'll put the background on the monitor and I kind of take pictures of the toys. And it's my way of not having to think about anything, just having fun like a kid. I don't think about work. I'm not really thinking about my family or nothing. It's just for me. Something that I do for fun, and it's just great.
I don't know much about the technical part of this. Taylor does all my photography and all my videos. Mm-hmm. How do you those little images, how do you take the picture? You do it with regular cameras, like a special lens, because how do you take it so it actually looks like life size?
Yeah. So I just use I have I have a camera. Right now I'm using a Canon SLO3. It's a little camera. It's not big.
Okay.
But I usually shoot with a 50 millimeter lens. If I want something to look a little more cinematic, I'll throw in maybe a 85 or a anamorphic lens to kind of give it a little more of that vibe to it. But yeah, just I have a bunch of different lenses that I use. I've been into photography for like 20 years now, and I used to shoot portraits and stuff. But the toy thing kind of just stayed.
That is fantastic. When I was a little kid, my thing was GI Joes, and like recreating all these elaborate battles in my mind. And this creativity, I think, is a great hobby. It's funny because the women in our lives oftentimes just have to realize we don't, on some level, men never really grow up.
Not really.
right? So it's like when my wife started dating me, and she got to know me a little bit, like she knew I was a big sports fan. She knew I was a big baseball fan. What she didn't realize is how deep and how nerdy I get with it. So, like, I don't know if you ever heard of this game, Stratomatic. So it's basically like this tabletop board baseball game. Like, only the nerdiest baseball guys play this. Like, it's unbelievable. So I will, and long and short of it is that I play solitaire Stratomatic, so I play myself and I keep all the stats and I make all these elaborate teams. I'm like, oh, if you put all the players that grew up in Texas together, would they be a good team? And like this part of the Dominican Republic, and like it is so incredible. I actually will type out to my other nerdy baseball friends like little summaries of the series I have in the games, and they're nerdy, but like we don't go this far. So it's like sometimes you just gotta let people do their thing, and everyone has their own thing, but it's healthy,
Yeah,
so
absolutely it is.
that is awesome. Charles, for the Founding Translation segment, you had a question for me about how these foreign affairs are impacting our domestic politics.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what do you think, or how you think the conflict is going on right now in the Middle East is going to impact the political landscape in this coming year?
It's interesting, and we certainly don't want to minimize what's happening. The conflict in the Middle East, obviously our prayers, are with healing and peace, and obviously everyone being reunited with their loved ones, and there being justice and peace in the region with everybody. But I think one of the things and I encourage people to check out Elie Mystal, who's actually a constitutional scholar, who you see a lot on TV talking about these constitutional political issues. But he actually wrote a piece which I thought I really agree with, and I wanted a moment to articulate about, is that this issue is really, I believe, the way it's being handled at this point can potentially sour more voters of color against the Democratic Party right now, because, and again, it's a very complicated story, but this idea that, on some level, it's not right, and it depends how you look at it, but it's not right that people that look a certain way or have a certain religion get treated this way, but it's okay. And in some way, if Palestinians are perceived that the American government sees innocent Palestinians as collateral damage in a war that none of the innocent people on both sides had anything to do with, then it certainly has the possibility of turning off people. There is a large, just starting with the basics, there's a large Arab American population in places like Michigan, which is a huge swing state in presidential politics. Our home state of Pennsylvania has a significant diverse communities. And, and there's always been a certain, particularly in the Puerto Rican community, there's always been a certain sect of very progressive, particularly progressive activists that saw the colonial connection in the U.S. and Puerto Rico and what's happened in Palestine and Israel. So there's already sort of people that have sensitivities to it. Social media is bringing all these tragedies to our phones every moment, every day. And so there definitely is a danger for particularly young people and people of color to be turned off by both parties and by this whole conflict. So I think it's something that we should look out for. And it's something that obviously we're really concerned about.
Yeah.
So on the WEPA segment, brother, let's put a smile on your face, bro.
All right.
Okay, people into the segment. We ask guests Puerto Rican litmus test questions. And so, brother, as our foremost mental health expert, that's also a North Philly homeboy, like a real North Philly guy. Where'd you grow up in North Philly, brother? Let's talk about the real.
West Kensington.
Okay, give me a block, brother. Give
Oh,
me
I grew up on Howard and Lehigh.
Howard and Lehigh. You can't get more hood than that. Right around the corner. Man, Lighthouse and all that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I grew up in 5th and Pike, cross even Porky's Point.
Okay, well.
So that's not Howard and Lehigh, dog. All right, and especially not back then. I want to ask Charles a couple staples of Puerto Rican manhood or traditional Puerto Rican manhood.
Right.
That we need to. So the question to Charles is in 2023, do we need to let some of this go? Or can we hold on to it? Do you have an opening statement before I get into some of these questions, Charles? You seem like you have something to say, bro.
No. So everything in context, right?
Okay.
Some things will be good.
See, everyone thinks I'm the politician. Everyone's always like putting like context to their answers.
Right. Everything's in context. So I think there are things that we do have to let go.
Yes.
Right. And things that in context may be okay.
Okay. All right. So if you want to couch all that, all right, brother. Pit bulls and other muscular domestic animals. Do we keep the Rotties? I mean, this is a lot of, this is a lot, bro. It's a lot.
If you are treating the dog respectfully,
okay,
you can keep the Rottie.
You can keep the Rottie.
But you can't clip his ears.
Can't clip. Okay.
You can't
so
clip
you know
the tail.
about this stuff. Okay. You can't trigger them.
No.
Talk about mental health for pit bulls. I like that. All right. This one, brother. I could go either way on this one. Elaborate car sound systems or other forms of bulky sound equipment.
Listen.
We got people down the way that got their sound system costs 3 times more than their whip.
Yes. That's wrong. Save your ears. Okay. You don't need that type of sound system booming.
That's another thing.
You know what I mean? Save your ears. You don't need that. That has to go.
Yeah, the investment is, the funny thing is that it's funny as technology makes it easier. I mean, you can have something this big that pumps it out. We have not let go of bulky sound equipment, bro.
No.
We'll go to Naka Mixing, bro, and we set up the whole DJ setup. They got more equipment than Taylor got, and we're doing a television show here. I love it. Hey, look, I'm not throwing stones. I'm just saying.
At the cookout is great, but
Cookout is great, but we could be a little more economical here, a little more efficient. All right, bro. Another one. Is it still acceptable in 2023 or 2024, I guess, be next summer, for a grown man, not a little kid, to get the wrench out and open the pompa? Is it still?
It depends how hot it's outside.
I'm actually fine with this, to be very honest with you.
I
We
am
need
too.
more public schools in this
Absolutely.
community. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, there was nothing. There was always that guy on the block that this
Right.
was like his thing.
He knew how to do. He
He
didn't
had
need a
the
wrench.
wrench. Huh?
Or he didn't need the wrench. He could use like some type of pliers.
Yeah. Or the thing with the old school tire wheel thing. Yeah, there was always a guy.
Absolutely.
There was always a guy. Bumba. All right, I actually just mentioned this earlier. Can we still be rocking Porky's Point, bro, and other cuchi frito restaurants around the country? I mean, it's great for you. It's great to taste, but you pay for it, brother.
Yeah,
We're talking about adults here.
it can't go away, but you do have to be mindful and just not eat it every day.
Okay. So once in a while, you can pull up.
Yeah.
You can pull up and grab it. I think
Yeah.
people like the whole, there's still a place for, kind of food stands like that. Where people-
Absolutely.
it's like Pat Steaks. If people don't know Porky's Point, you pull up, you can get rice and beans and a pork sandwich, and you could kind of stay in there. There's still a place for that kind of dining
think so.
option.
I think so.
Live
for
air,
sure.
people rapping right there,
Yeah,
pulling up
especially
the
you don't
whips.
want it always like,
It's always a little car show right there. People
and it's
pulling
better
up.
than like if you can't cook that night. I'd rather go to Porky's Point than another fast food joint.
All right. And this last one, I don't know why this is here because nobody does this. Our burner IG account where you anonymously follow Colombian fitness models. I don't know who does that. So we're going to take that question out because nobody does that. Nobody's at, Tangeray Papi following Colombian fitness models. I don't know, anyway. So we'll ignore that one. Charles, brother, you were actually speaking about, going back to the conversation about Latino men and mental health, you're going to be speaking on a very important related topic around overcoming trauma in our community. Tell us about your upcoming presentation with the Latino Behavioral Health Coalition.
Yes, well,
brother.
so you, as I'm sure you know, the Latino Behavioral Health Coalition is having the first binational
in
conference.
Santo Domingo. See?
Santo Domingo.
Zulai was telling us about it.
Yep. So I'm heading over on the 14th, and I will be presenting a
That's what's
workshop
up.
on men roles and ending domestic violence. I think domestic violence, when we think about it, we think of women and children,
Yes.
and we leave out of the equation who is committing the violence. When you think about in the 80s, they used to have something called battered woman syndrome, totally eliminating the man from
Yeah.
the topic of conversation, right? So I think that it's time for men to realize what their role is in doing it. Because and this is not to say that men don't suffer in domestic violence, because they do, but over 90% of all domestic violence, women against children, violence against women, and violence against men are done by other men. Over 90%. So what is our role in that? And I kind of want to present that at the training with also the cultural sensitivity, because that I'll have mostly Latino men there. And part of that is understanding that we can't be bystanders, right? No longer can we just sit back and say it's not my problem, right? It is your problem. It's a human condition. It's a human problem.
That's right.
So whenever you have to interject yourself, you do it safely, right? If you can, physically, then do. If you can't, remove yourself from the situation and call for help.
That's right.
That's the very simple you can do. If it's a family member, then you have to hold that family member accountable.
That's right.
For that.
That's right.
And then immediate aid to the person who's been injured. And we don't victim blame. If it's the second time she was here, I told you should have left the first time you did it.
Yeah.
We shouldn't do that.
That's real, dog. That happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Or this assumption she's going to drop the charges anyway, and then I'm going to be the one that's going to deal with this knucklehead
Absolutely.
forever.
Those things need to change. And ultimately, the best thing about it is that by Latino men, right, showing up with their families, I know that my sons are going to treat their wives respectfully. My daughter, fiance, the man she's chosen to be her husband, he is respectful. He's a hard worker. He protects her, and he protects the baby. And she got that because she had somebody to model that for her. She knew what she wanted in a man. So modeling the behavior, not being a womanizer, right? Being respectful, protecting your family, being accountable to yourself, right? That is key for making this transition. And it's go to hurt. It's go to hurt because men don't want to hear that they're part of the problem. But we have to take accountability for that.
I was texting with some homies the other day, my sports guys talk about the whole Ja Morant situation and how, the irony of this whole thing is that he was fortunate enough to have a life with a stable home and 2 family that all the homeboys in the street would trade for a second. And oftentimes they're in the street because they don't have that support system. And he's got this weird, thing in his head as a young boy that's trying to, that he's got some things he's dealing with it. But, and I was commenting to my buddies that I was like, that boring family life with stable parents, and that's the best kind of life,
Yeah.
So brother, one last, want to give you the opportunity to just please share one last message, particularly for men who have been victimized by sexual trauma, to give them a message about how they can become unbroken. They need to put a little work into it, but they need to please reach out for mental health services and continue that process.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing to remember is that no matter what was done to you, no matter what happened to you, it wasn't your fault. But it is your responsibility to get better. It is your responsibility to heal. And you can heal. I don't care how long this happened, how fresh or how old. It took me 30 years to start my journey to be better, to be healed, to be a better husband, better father. It took me 30 years to get there. And so that means that no matter how old you are, you can always heal. You're never too old to heal, right? So the work is hard, but it's fruitful.
That's right. That's right. I want to thank you, brother. That's why you have to purchase Little Charlie Unbroken. Again, anywhere you can purchase a book. I want to thank you, brother. Let me tell you something. I've been podcasting 10.5 years. And of all this work, grinding until a few months ago with XBX guys, literally in my basement and trying to figure out this out. It took me 31 episodes to figure out how to get it on iTunes. There's like 30 episodes on SoundCloud because I didn't know how to do it. I was so bad with the technical stuff, and just soft and feeling like, what's the point of doing this? I'm exhausted. I have a life. I have a mortgage. I got a family, and this. Who cares? But let me tell you something. And I say it sincerely. If one guy or one person here's your message today to go get help and continue that healing process, it was all worth it. It really was, because the inspiration you have provided in this book and by your personal message is priceless. And I just want to thank you, brother, for your leadership. You're going to keep coming back. We're going to keep these conversations going. There's a whole conversation, brother, I want to have with you that I want to share some stuff with our audience around my struggles with how I define my masculinity and how I feel like a lot of times, even though on paper it looks like I'm taking care of business, I feel I fall short all the time. And so there's a lot of conversation we need to have here, brother. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Taylor Cadadis, XP Productions. Today's sponsor, the Latin Podcast Awards. Check out Latin Podcast Awards as a podcaster and also as a podcast listener. And I want to shout out Joel Bedocal from the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce that was our principal sponsor of a great Bomba Live we had here at Pyramid Club. You're going to see more National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce involvement here in Bomba Live. Thank you so much, brother. Watch on YouTube and anywhere you can download a podcast. Con Bomba.